Hello, everyone. I just finished the newly released audio drama series, 1,000 Years of War. This is a new release from Blizzard on YouTube, and if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend checking it out. It fills in Alleria and Turalian's story following the close of the Dark Portal at the end of the Second War. There is a lot to consider, and I'll be commentating on it all, so please do yourself a favor, pause this video, get something to drink, listen to the audio drama, and come back. It's okay, I'll wait. Okay, I'm assuming we've all listened to the story, so let's dive in. Things start off with Alleria and Turalian lost in the Twisting Nether, stalked by an invisible assassin. Lothraxion, the Nathrezim paladin, makes contact with them and guides them back to the shattered world of Draenor. They talk about what to do about their stalker, and Alleria makes the logical argument that even though their stalker was following them, what would be the priority target, a pair of recruits or a commander in the Army of Light? Lothraxion spends a little time instructing Turalian in the finer points of wielding the light and leaves to draw off the assassin, who prepares to strike at Alleria in Turalian's guise, and she outwits him by giving the wrong name for her son Eretor and grievously wounds him. She's shortly joined by the real Turalian, and they set about an interrogation. Alleria repeats her line of logic to the assassin. What is more valuable, a commander or a pair of recruits? It would seem a pair of recruits. The demon eventually answers that they are singled out by fate, that fate has plans for them. Okay, let's pause here and consider some things. This line of reasoning makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I am certainly not a big fan of the concept of an overarching fate that controls everything and everyone and forces the universe along a preordained path. I feel like this needlessly aggrandizes the role of a select few people in history while trivializing everyone else. This is obviously not how human agency works, and no matter how well written the story, fate makes a poor vehicle to explore the character's relationship to time and opportunity. But let's look beyond that for a moment. The point here is that an assassin is willing to give up killing a commander for two recruits. There are a couple of huge logical issues with this. First, the two recruits are mortal. They will die regardless over time. Lothraxion is an immortal, and thus a better target of opportunity. Second, the Army of Light perceives the recruits to be in trouble, dazed and confused, and ultimately vulnerable, in addition to being necessary to their cause. Doesn't it make more sense to use them as bait and pick off members of the Army of Light who seek them out? One would think that would be the more effective tactic. Moving on, the demon assassin predictably makes a bunch of impotent threats at Alleria, including threatening Eretor. Just as predictably, Alleria kills the demon. They are shortly joined, not by Lothraxion, but by Zira, the Mother of Light. She shares her regrets that mortals are involved in what is essentially a primal conflict, and takes part of the blame for it, vaguely mentioning her failure, along with the failure of others. She informs them that the two of them represent hope for the universe, stating that the Burning Legion had altered the destiny of the universe, and that everyone and everything was doomed to oblivion. She shows the two of them just how badly the deck is stacked against Azeroth, the importance of Illidan, and the presence of an emerald star, which happens to be the Titan soul Argus the Unmaker, the force responsible for endlessly resurrecting fallen members of the Burning Legion. She then transports them to where the Army of Light was encamped, bringing us to part 2 of the series. And The start of this part of the story finds Turalyon being examined and empowered by the light. And Zira makes the same statement to him that she made to Illidan in rejection of the gift. Your old life has passed, the light will forge you a new one. In the video I made commenting on the rejection of the gift, I was curious if Turalyon was drinking the light's Kool-Aid, and I think this gives the answer as a definitive yes. There's dialogue about Alleria and Turalyon looking in on their son, Eretor, through the light. And if there's part of the story that I absolutely love, it's of Alleria's desperately wanting to connect with her son, while Turalyon feels pride that Eretor has grown into a paladin in his own right. Getting back to Turalyon, it's revealed that he has actually become one with the light and is as such now immortal. Turalyon and Alleria are shown to the narrow ship, the Zenidar. And right about here, the story speaks of a difference in the passage of time as the two become accustomed to life in the twisting nether. Time is very subjective to the person experiencing it. To use a common example, if someone was near the event horizon of a black hole, time would dilate or slow down relative to people observing at a greater distance. The story alludes to the reverse, where there's a form of time compression, essentially time passing more rapidly in the twisting nether than on Azeroth. Also, the story confirms that Lothraxion had been purified by the light, meaning that at some point in the past, he had undergone the same process that Turalyon went through. But how did that come about? I'm still curious as to whether Lothraxion's change was freely by his choice, a convert or die sort of change at gunpoint, or if he was simply forcibly turned the same way as Zira attempted with Illidan. And some will probably say that he wouldn't care if he died, since he'd be resurrected on Argus anyway. I'd point out that if this choice were forced upon him in the twisting nether, that would be a whole different story. There's just too much we still don't know about Lothraxion, but it's starting to look like he did in fact have a choice in the matter from what we'll see later. For now, we're told that Lothraxion was tasked by the Legion with eliminating creatures of the void. Perhaps this served to push him towards an alignment with the light. The story goes on, illustrating the horror of the void by recounting a visit to a Legion prison world, where every last demon had been pulled into the twisting nether and slaughtered. Alleria is assaulted by some sort of void fiend, exposing her to void energies and starting her down the path to an affinity with it. She's granted some visions of the future, of her standing before the Emerald Heart, the Titan soul of Argus, and of her diving off a cliff into infinite darkness. Alleria becomes curious about the shadow, asks Lothraxion about it, and is warned what it would do to her, along with the fact that Zira would be very unsympathetic if she was to pursue studying it. But he mentions the Locust Walker, relating that this individual had specifically pulled him out of the nether to kill him, stating that he saw a unique destiny for Lothraxion and that he wanted him to be reborn. Alleria goes to see Zira and asks to seek out the Locust Walker, using the enemy of my enemy is my friend argument, and Zira shuts her down immediately, stating that the light does not treat with the void. Zira tells her bluntly that if she pursues contact with the void, she will lose Turalyon, Eretor, Silvermoon, Azeroth, and everything she holds dear. She tells Alleria that she knows how to strike down the void, and that is all she needs to know. But not all there is to know, as we'll later learn. Hundreds of years go by from Alleria's perspective, until finally the Burning Legion invaded Outland, the remains of Draenor. and the forces of Azeroth were committed to keeping the Legion away from the Dark Portal in Hellfire Peninsula. Alleria meets with both Turalyon and Xera to propose a strike against Argus while the Legion is preoccupied. Xera agrees and sends both her and Turalyon both. During this, the two of them come across Titan ruins and the anguished Titan soul of Argus. It imparts all of its memories, stretching back to the dawn of time, to Alleria. However, the uproar alerted the Legion that something was going on, and the demons of the Legion found and surrounded the tiny transport that was their only means of escape. There is some internal dialogue on Alleria's part, recounting how Xera couldn't foresee what happened after they arrived, wondering why that was the case. Why Turalyon didn't experience the vision from the World Soul. And something inside her answers in a super creepy voice, because they are not free. I know I can't be the only one thinking, what the fuck was that? Clearly not Alleria's internal voice. According to the story, Alleria recognized it, and I think we're to believe that it was the void itself. Alleria somehow channels void energy, creates a portal to the twisting nether, and pushes Turalyon through it. After Turalyon recovers, he's horrified at what Alleria has done. Despite the heartbreak between the two of them, Alleria moves on alone, walking the path of shadow. And this brings us to the end of Part 2. In Part 3, we find Alleria being taught by Locust Walker, and Turalyon organizing withdrawal from a failed mission on Argus. Turalyon was forced to turn back from a mission that would have allowed the Army of Light to deal with the Legion's portal barriers, devices that prevented them from teleporting to Argus. This effectively stalemated the conflict. Alleria is posing as a captive on Niskara, undergoing torment by the Legion Inquisitor, in order to obtain a Soul Stone. She snuffs the Inquisitor out with the shadow and releases the Locust Walker from a nearby cage in the same instant. The two of them depart Niskara through a portal summoned by the Locust Walker, leaving behind Thasdora, where it is found, in the Marksman Hunter artifact weapon quest. The two of them arrive deep in the void, what those who follow the lore would call the Great Dark Beyond, a realm beyond the twisting nether and close to oblivion itself. The Locust Walker begins teaching Alleria how to maintain her sanity in the face of the void. And I don't know who they got to voice act the Locust Walker, but it sounds kind of like Christopher Lambert. I don't think it is actually him, but it certainly has the same gravelly, raspy voice. The scene shifts back to Turalyon and Lothraxion, with the Nathrezim telling Turalyon of a dead woman being discovered on board the Zenidar. This is a ruse, and we discover too late that the body on the ground is actually a gravely wounded Lothraxion, just as the Eridar assassin strikes Turalyon from behind. It plans to rip Turalyon's soul from his body to keep alongside Alleria's, and to present Kil'jaeden with a trophy in the form of Lothraxion. The story shifts back to Alleria, who's struggling to learn how to endure the voices of madness in the void. The Locust Walker explains to her that while the light is blind and can't see destiny fully, the shadow is just as blind. It sees only a fragment of destiny. She also saw the light through the void's perspective, where the light was monstrous, enslaving mortals and requiring their absolute obedience, incinerating those who would not obey it. The Locust Walker explains that both the light and the shadow see each other as monsters, corrupting and enslaving everything they touch, but that neither view is actually true, and neither is actually wrong. He explains that the light seeks one path and shuns all others. The shadow seeks every possible path. Alaria is hit with a series of visions, and one of them in particular is interesting. That Alaria was kneeling before the one that slumbers beneath Azeroth's waves, before killing it and taking its place, leading an army of horrors to overrun Azeroth. The one that slumbers is a clear reference to N'Zoth, and it seems that we're being given yet another sign that he will occupy our very near future. Getting back to the story, Alaria is confronted with a vision of the assassin killing Turalyon and harvesting his soul. She uses the Soul Stone, linked with one the assassin held, to open a portal and uses it to confront Turalyon's attacker, driving the assassin away. She forces the poison out of Lothraxion, curing him. He's then able to help Turalyon while Alaria hunts down the Eridar assassin guy. And this she does, yanking the demon from the void back into the twisting nether. She impales him over and over with void spikes. Finally, Alaria kills him, stating that it had promised to kill her son. There's a bittersweet reunion between Turalyon and Alaria, but it's cut short by Zira's arrival. And she is absolutely wrathful. Turalyon and Lothraxion both attempt to intercede on her behalf. Lothraxion in particular stating that Alaria had saved them, knowing that she wouldn't be accepted, and that this showed courage, honor, and selflessness. And Zira says, "Virtues count for nothing if you stray from the path the light chooses for you." And there it is. I've said before that Zira acted like a fanatic, and I could come up with a better argument, or one more elegant than this if I wanted to. Zira literally places the light itself on a higher moral plane than moral ideas themselves. Zira, to her credit, tries to offer Alaria redemption from the shadow, asking if Alaria will renounce it and return to the light. Alaria states simply that she will continue to fight against the Burning Legion. Zira will not accept that and has her imprisoned. And that brings us to the end of Part 3 of the series. There are a couple of things I do think need to be addressed based on what we've learned. First, in rejection of the gift, I was under the impression that Prophet Valen was the only one capable of peering into the future, and after reviewing a lot of the lore surrounding his visions, I decided against arguing that Zira should have foreseen what would happen when she attempted to forcibly convert Illidan. But now I think it's clear that if any light or void touch person can see into the future or fate itself, then she definitely could have known. Second, the ideologies that present themselves with regards to the light and shadow are fascinating to me. They imply a crystalline sense of order to the light and a sense of chaotic dissolution to the void. Back during the mid to late 90s, there was a sci-fi show called Babylon 5. If you haven't seen the series in its entirety, I highly recommend it. It does an incredible job of dealing with the tropes of light versus darkness, order versus chaos, and authoritarianism versus free will. That aside, the primary conflict in that series involved an ages-old philosophical dispute between Vorlons, angelic beings made up of pure light and energy, and the Shadows, an incredibly involved insectoid race. Their differences of opinion being expressed in terms of all-out galactic war. You can definitely see a lot of the same elements from that series in Blizzard's version of the light versus dark conflict. Also, the Prophet Valen is a long-standing Easter egg referring to the character Valen in Babylon 5. Finally, I think the concept of fate and destiny are overused in this story. In my opinion, it's fine to say so-and-so had a vision of the future. There's been all sorts of discussion about how time may not be strictly linear, and that it may not be as simple and straightforward as an unending series of causalities and outcomes. But whenever you attach the words fate or destiny, you're also giving time and space a moral agency on par with, say, ancient man deifying natural disasters. A volcano erupts, that has to be Hephaestus. A thunderstorm passes overhead, Thor must be smiting some Jotuns. You saw your future in a dream or vision, it must be fate. And if fate is responsible for everything that happens to you and every choice you will ever make, then life is an absolute meaningless exercise, and any semblance of identity is just a hollow illusion. All of this aside, I did actually enjoy 1,000 Years of War. I think it did a good job of filling in Hilary and Turalion's past while hinting at what the future holds for all of us. But I'm curious what you think. Please let me know in the comments below. Please like this if you enjoyed it and found it entertaining, and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more. This is Dartt, and until next time, I'll see you in game.